Groovy indeed. Alright, so finally, took us 2 episodes to get here, but we're finally on the sword. I had to wait an episode or 2 just because of the handle on this. I was using a clay mold, and foam clay takes forever to dry, so it got pushed off to the side for a bit. So I'm not really sure if this video is going to be up or not before or after I go to the convention. Like always, everything is farther ahead right now as of recording than what's actually out. Either way, after this video on the sword, we'll be talking about the rest of the detailing and paint and all that stuff. As of like right now, everything is almost ready for paint. I more or less need to seal everything up, clean it, and then I just take it out. So let's go into discussion about the actual construction of the Chainsword. First things first, I've mentioned this before, I have tons and tons and tons of notes for everything that I have worked on. I work a 12-hour shift and it's a very boring night, so I'm constantly drawing, making notes, ideas, trying to think of issues I've had before, solutions, you know. I can't remember where it was, if it was on Instagram, here, Facebook, TikTok, or somewhere, because I'm on all of them, but someone made a joke saying like, man, you must be like an engineer by trade or something like that. In reality, I just have way too much free time at work, and I need something to do while I'm there, and this is all I can think about while I'm there. So I have 12 hours to figure out a solution to a problem. That's the secret. Okay, so I showed you all the notes. I went through it earlier and I can't find the notes that I have made for this, but if you watched my last video on the construction of this, so quick recap on that. Everything I'm building for this costume is based on this guy right here. So when I did the gun, I took his gun and I did some conversions to figure out how big everything was supposed to be. It wasn't gonna be 100% perfect, but it would be pretty close. Did the same exact thing for the sword. So with the bolter, let's go back just a step farther. When building the suit, I realized that, so the suit was 5 inches tall, and me, I'm gonna be like 7-ish feet, give or take. Like 7 to the top of the head. So I did conversions for that, and I was basing all of my measurements based on inches to feet and all that stuff. 5 inches, 7 feet. I think it was like 1.5 or something like that. I can't remember. But when I was doing conversions for the gun, I was doing those same conversions, and then I did a quick realization that, well, if I check the millimeters on this, so for example, so not counting the barrel on this little guy, from back to front, it's 20 millimeters, or 40 millimeters. Yeah, 20 millimeters. Or, shit, now I forget. Yes, okay. I'm dumb. The gun is 40 millimeters long, which makes sense. So anyway, I realized if I took the 40 millimeters from this, divide that in half, instead of saying millimeters, now say inches, the gun is 20 inches. And it worked out insanely close to what I wanted. Made it a hair smaller, which is good because I want to be able to handle it better. Plus, for some reason, I didn't want these things to be astronomically huge, even though this thing is huge. Height-wise, I forget what this is. I'm not getting a tape measure out. Let's get a tape measure out. If I was good at my job, I would be doing all of this beforehand and making notes and writing a script. But when you're trying to record videos while working on a deadline, you don't have that luxury. So we are looking at almost 5 feet, 4 feet, 8 inches. So it's pretty long. But I did say that, so about being on a deadline. So we'll jump into that topic real quick, and then we'll jump into the build. Right now I have 2 weeks until Sci-Fi Valley Con, which is June 9th, 10th, and 11th. Costume contest is June 10th. Right now everything's ready for paint. After this video, I don't know if this video will come up before or after the convention, but it's somewhere around there. But so the last few videos, I've just been winging it. I took my B-roll, edited it down real quick, and I just come down here, record, and I'm like walking you through what I see, what I notice. Everything after this video, I'm going to be able to actually take my time with the videos, which means they might be more entertaining, or they might be a little more detailed and thorough, or might be shorter. I might even make them shorter. That way I can talk about one thing in one video, one thing in another, but I'll be able to spend more time prep work for the video. I'll be able to write a script or lay out what I want to talk about, and I won't have to craft after this video, so I'll be able to spend more time in video production. So now that I'm done rambling, let's talk about how I made this sword. So, like I said, started off with making a bunch of measurements, converted everything out. I cannot remember off the top of my head what all these were, and that piece of paper you're seeing right now, I don't have it in my pile. I must have lost it or threw it out, or it's hidden somewhere in a pile of other notes that I just don't notice. So once I had that all figured out, I bought a handful of 1/2-inch PVC piping. I tried to make sure I used up everything that I had. So that handle is going up probably like 3/4 of the thing. If you've watched this video here on this sword, the handle on that only goes up maybe 2 inches into the actual blade, but it's still sturdy because of the hand guard on the side. This one doesn't have that, so I shoved it up the entire way. Well, not the entire way. It probably goes to like here, probably. But once I had the framework made out in PVC piping, I bought some pink insulation foam. Now this insulation foam is also 1/2-inch. That's the whole reason that I used 1/2-inch PVC pipe. That way when I go to put that around it, it's all the same width. So I took my measurements, figured out how wide I wanted everything to be. Again, I don't remember off the top of my head how wide everything was, and I lost my notes, which is weird because I have like a stack of them. But anyway, measured everything out and then cut it out. There'd be 2 pieces layered on top of each other. Of course, one of the pieces was going to wrap around the PVC piping, so I measured out about the center, then the width of the piping, and then cut that out. Once I had everything cut out, I actually put it back in together because I need to hot glue all this together. So the 3 pieces that I had cut out for the actual PVC piping, I put that back together, taped it all together, and then glued the 2 halves, the front, the top, and the bottom together. Once those were glued together, took that tape off, and then put the PVC pipe down inside, glued that all down, both the top and bottom, or inner, outer, whatever. Made sure I had the tape wrapped around tight so that it was up against it, and then just gave it just tons and tons of hot glue, both top and bottom. Once I had that done for the internal structure, I needed to make an external internal structure. This would have been more or less the framework for the chain mechanism itself inside the chainsword. This would not be seen either, so it didn't need to look super pretty. More or less I just needed it to wrap around the insulation foam. Yeah, I just did a quick measurement on that, started gluing everything up. Big pro tip when it comes to pink insulation foam, don't use contact cement. It will eat through it, and you probably don't want to breathe that either. So I made that mistake initially because I completely forgot, because it's been a while since I actually used pink insulation foam. It's been a couple months. Which I can't even remember if I made that same mistake on this one. Anyway, let's see. I did cut that little notch I cut out. That was mostly because I put an end cap on top of the PVC piping, just so it had something extra to kind of grab. That way when everything was kind of held together, it would, I don't know, it was an idea I had. So it did stick out just a little bit past the insulation foam. So when I laid down the cheap Hobby Lobby foam over top of it, I cut out a little square around where that was, and it didn't stick out past the Hobby Lobby foam, so that was fine. So once all that was down, I just took a ton of hot glue and just started filling in every gap ever around the holes that I'd cut in it around the handle. After that came time to round off the end, because the outer edge of this is where the track for the chain links will glue to. I mean, it's not going to be operational. So after that, for some reason I thought it would have been a smart idea to do the same thing around the guard of the handle. In the end, this ended up being, it ended up making it too bulky for the outer shell, and I ended up cutting this off later, so I'm not even talking about that. From there, I made another goof. I had made the entire thing too wide. So when I did my measurements for how much insulation I wanted, we'll show this real quick. For some reason, I think I counted the entire width of the thing from end of the chain to the back. Obviously, I don't want that because, you know, I wanted it more to here to here. I wanted it to be this, and for some reason I counted, or something got messed up in translation. So I think it was a me problem. So I cut off both front and back how much I needed. It's offset a little bit because I still wanted some of that foam to be out to here, just to make sure all of this was stiff. In the end, I still want the ends of this and the ends of this to be flush on the actual guard of the handle, and that was my goal. It looks flush. I think it's flush, or not flush, but even, symmetrical, whatever. But it doesn't really look it because of how weird the actual shape is. Like your actual run out guard for the blade, because your blade's gonna kind of like wrap around inside here supposedly. Yeah, like run in here. And then this is like your heat shield for the motor. So I don't know. But for how far this sticks out and how far that sticks out, I wanted them to be even on these. So I ended up cutting off a decent amount of everything afterwards, because I think I wanted it to be like an internal structure when really I just needed to be the internal chain structure. After that, I started making notes for how far out I needed that run-in guard and the motor in the back to be. That way I could get an idea of how high things were and all that. When I was making all my measurements, I just drew them right onto the sword, because that part's gonna get covered up anyway, so it didn't hurt anything to just draw it on there rather than go and getting paper or something. I did the same for the chain. I measured out, after I figured out that run-in guard, I kind of figured out, okay, chain's gonna start here, it's gonna stop here, how big do I want them, how much length am I dealing with? That way I could figure out how many pieces of chain I needed, how big I needed them to be, and then like a design for them. And I just sketched it all out there because I knew I would end up losing my notes if I have it actually drawn onto the sword. Let's see, and from there I started doing some mock-ups on what I wanted in terms of shape and size. That, it looks like I am referring to this note here. So let's pause the video real quick. So I didn't want like a basic chain. I wanted something that was, I don't know, cooler, I guess. So I was looking around online to try and find other chain link designs, you know, because most chain swords, when you see them, it's just one blade shaped like a shark tooth, and that's it. But I found one model, and I can't remember where it was or what it was even from, but I think it was on ArtStation. I could be wrong. But it was like a 3-piece chain. So it had your regular shark tooth, but then it had like 2 tiny little protruding blades on the side as well. So it was like, I'll show it as long as I don't knock anything over. Yeah. So it's got like little blades on the side of it. Just something to give it a little bit more dimension, so it doesn't seem so basic, because this is kind of like a cool looking sword in my opinion, and I wanted something to also kind of stick out with the chain, because otherwise that would look too simple. Kind of like that one. It's cool, but the chain links just look generic. I wanted something a little extra, so I want a little extra. If you saw my episode on, was it the backpack? Yeah, I was worried about how much that was going to drive me insane to make after making them, surprisingly was not an issue in terms of tediousness. Sure, there was a lot of them, but it was all the same piece. It was very easy, a simple shape, and I had to like really mess with getting into anything. So once I had the shape and sizes that I needed, I just started cutting them all out. I can't remember exactly how many. I think there's 13 on here, but I think I had made about 18 total. I can't remember, but I did the same thing with some other stuff after this. It's nicer to have a couple extra just in case your math is wrong, or if you make a bad one, then you have another one you can swap out from. You know, you can take the best of the batch and leave the junk behind. But this also meant that I was cutting the same thing out 3 times. The center one, I believe, was 10 millimeters, and then I think the sides were 6. I think the other reason I did this too was because the actual width of the sword is pretty thick. With the 10 millimeters and stuff, it would have been really thin. I would need to make it insanely thick, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna make it thicker, I need to add some, I don't know, something to it. And I think that was one of the other reasons I added the 3-piece thing. But yeah, so because I had to make however many, which I think I made about 18 total, just in case, which meant I had to make 36. I don't know, I'd make double that for the side ones. So once I had all of my hundreds and hundreds of, well, not that many, but I had all of my chain links, came time to do all my work to them. Let's see, I think I was, yeah, it looks like I'm dividing up the sides and the centers. So the sides, I think I was angling the side of them, so I had to go through and Dremel all of those ones flush, or not flush, but work out an angle, because it'd been a lot easier just to Dremel it than to take a knife to it. What's worse though is that you don't even really notice that I did that on these. I believe that might have been on the inside so that they would kind of stick out a little bit, but I ended up just pressing them up against it anyway. I don't know if it did any good or not, but yeah, that's a lot of dremeling. So once I was all dremeled, then came time to glue all 3 pieces together. Still keeping everything separate, and it's just, the table's just full. This is one of those things that, like, once you do it, you have to just keep doing it and power through it until you're done, because you don't want that stuff to just sit. It definitely is something you really have to just kind of like power through until you're done. So it's not something you want to start at the end of the day for a project. It's like you need to start the day with this. Then I also needed to make, I don't know what you'd call them. I'm no designer of chainsaws, but the like the little link pieces between them. There's like a little notch, I guess you could say. I can see it kind of on this, but it's like it's a little notch that kind of runs in between them. Yeah, I had a couple round dowels, old round foam dowels, so I cut them out, split them in half, and then made sure that when I went to put everything on, it fit in between. So when I was making this, I made the mistake of not like measuring out like a guideline for the chains. So my chains are kind of going like this as they go up. This time I made sure that I measured and I drew a line the whole way down. So when I went to glue everything on, it wouldn't shift one way or the other, and it was nice and center. And then after that, I was just glue everything on. Let's see. And then from there, I took my notes that I had made previously. I just used it as reference for my measurements, made a piece for that. And when I was setting it up, I was using it as reference because I was gonna have to trim some of the blades that were below it, just to make sure everything kind of fit. Then I also made the top, what would it be, the run out guard? Yeah, so you know, like on the top you got the run out guard, and then the bottom you got the run in guard. I don't know if that's just what I'm referring to it as. I guess you could say it's probably more of a reference for when I go to do the actual final outer shell piece. Then along with that, I made the outer bevel edge. I probably didn't have to do this, but I think it gave me something to work with on the final layer. And then once that entire inner piece was done, I got to do the actual outer shell, the black piece of this. Yeah, here I am showing the whole thing off. So I have a giant roll of 12mm foam. Well, multiple rolls of it. This was a nice little upgrade I got from TNT Cosplay. I had bought their 10mm foam, and they emailed me like a day later and was like, hey, there was an inventory mess up. We are out of stock on our 10mm. They're like, we do have 12mm. Do you want that with no upcharge? And I was like, hell yes, I'll take that. I don't really think I needed 12mm, but I could find some use for it. And I did. It ended up becoming the outer shell for this. I figured it's thicker, it means that it's gonna be sturdier, it'll hold up better, especially for this, being one big giant sheet. It'll do exactly what I need. So that's what I ended up using. I had to unroll it first, which I don't really show too much, but now I started doing a ton of my measurements and then cut all of that out. I mean, if I could have gotten away with just tracing it, I would have, but used my first piece I cut out as reference. And then came time to glue all of that on. 2 giant sheets, 2 giant globs of glue. And then I got to apply that same amount on the sword itself too. I don't think, yeah, it sticks out only a hair past the inner. Not a lot, just a little. Yeah, waited for all that to dry and then just pressed it all on at once. And as I was trying to make, I think the back half pieces, I believe Sable wanted attention and to sit on the foam, and she required a good 10 minutes of attention. And then as I'm trying to cut these strips out, she keeps wagging her tail in front of me. I had to more or less like move her out of the way. We're like, put your tail over there. You want to keep your tail. Safety first for the kitty cat. And then once the glue was dry, pressed it all down. Then after the back shield was done, I had to do a cover for the front, which also had an angle to it. Sable wanted more attention, looks like. But yeah, so that front shield thing, even though you don't really, I guess you can see it. But yeah, it has an inward bevel from the outside in, so it's not as wide. I believe I did might have done like a 45 angle on that to get it to kind of swoop in. Then I just had to fill in the rest, which would have been all this, basically just the flat part along the side that just runs up it. I believe that those were both 45-degree angles to get a 90-degree bend, so everything would have been, yeah. From there came the fun part, which was making the hand guard. So earlier I think I mentioned that when I made the Hobby Lobby foam cover, I thought I was doing something good to kind of add something to it, but it ended up being a bit of a hindrance because it got in the way, mostly because of how thick the black foam is, being 12mm. So the guard's got like a swooping shape to it, and it gets really, really tight there in the center because of how thick the foam is. That extra Hobby Lobby foam that I had on it was literally just blowing it out, and everything in the center, the contact cement was just ripping. So I had to more or less cut all that back out. It was still it was still a really tight fit, but mostly what I did was I filled the inside of that thing up with contact cement, wet contact cement, so it could act like lube, so it could actually slide in. Otherwise it wouldn't have gone in at all. But yeah, these were more or less just curved boxes. So when I glued everything together, you know, 45 angle on all of it because it's just a square. This is a little dark, but so before I started putting all the detailing on the side, like the motor and all that stuff, I did more measuring and I realized that the sword was too thick. Again, I did more measuring mess up and somehow counted the entire end of the motor cover as the end of the chain cover. I knew I was gonna have to cut it off and fix it because as far back that chain cover was going onto the handguard, when I went to go put the whole heat shielding and stuff on the motor, it would have stuck out way too far. So I had to cut off, it wasn't even a lot, like a 1/2 inch like a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. It was not a lot, but it was enough that I was debating on whether or not I should or shouldn't. But eventually I'm like, it's not gonna look right in the end, cut it off. So I cut off like 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch along the back end, and then salvaged the bend I already had and then glued that right back on. But I think it meant that I had to also cut through the insulation foam as well. So in hindsight, that insulation foam and everything being offset like it was, it should have just been the same. Live and learn. All right, so once that was all done, came time to start doing the actual details on the base of the sword. So that would have been like more or less just the motor and the little heat shield that's on it and all that stuff. So see, I pull my phone out, got some construction paper or something, and I just started running a ton of number conversions, figuring out how thick, how wide everything is, and then I converted that all to paper. You can see I am literally going inch for inch, or millimeter for inch, 1 inch for every 2 millimeters, yeah. But you can see I'm actually getting down like an exact copy of what everything is, the entire bend. I used a roll of tape and a roll of contact cement just to kind of figure out like the circle that I was going to need for the one piece on the back half, which is a neat point of interest that I mentioned in another video, but I don't remember what video. So when I made this, the little heat shield, the little exhaust vent on it, this piece here, I'd pull it down, but I don't feel like it. So this piece here on that, it's on both sides. I never had a miniature or an action figure or any of these things. So when you play a video game, you only ever tend to see one side of a sword. So like even in Darktide, you know, when you're swinging the sword, you're only ever seeing the side that's facing you. You're never seeing the other side. So every time I see this freaking vent, I'm like, oh, must just be on both sides. When I see pictures of it, this is usually this profile side that you see. You never see this side. So that sword has that vent on both sides. I was so happy to be able to finally fix that on this. But anyway, I'm just rambling. I came up with my measurements for both my pieces. I had them both cut out, made sure that the bevels for the heat shield on the back were in the same spot. Marked out where I needed them to be with marker and glue them all on. Yeah, so the heat shield actually sticks up a little bit off of the back of this. I probably should have hollowed this out, but I didn't because I don't care. But so it's the actual like little heat shield on the back. It's elevated a little bit. This is one of the nice things about having black foam for something like that, because when I go to paint all this and put it in black plasti dip, I don't have to worry too much about getting every nook and cranny in that because it's already black. So no huge worries. Yeah, it looks like I cut the bevel out first before actually cutting out the notches for the little heat shield, which I used a similar method when I was doing the bolt gun. I'd cut the vents out afterwards, put it all on first, and then cut the vents out. Cause yeah, so the front and back piece I already had the circular bevel part, so I could just line them up with my blade, match the two, and then cut it straight across, which I believe is what I did. Yep, that's exactly what I did. And it comes straight out. Mostly because it's elevated, so nothing got glued up against the actual back of the sword. Let's see, and then from there came a bunch of details. I don't know how I determined the size of my circles. I just circled everything I had lying around, so like the cap of a can of contact cement, roll of tape, crap like that. But I had them kept in mind when I was drawing up my templates too. Yeah, this one was kind of neat. So I knew in the figure it has like a recessed bit around it. So I kind of cut out like a bevel shape first. I had a circle, like a bigger circle traced out, when I went to angle it, and then took my Dremel and kind of smoothed it all out to really fill in that bevel. Well, only then, after that, once the whole recession was beveled, then I put the piece in. Did the same for the little giant ball thingies on the top. Same on the bottom. I believe I did Dremel all of them first. I hope I did. Yeah, they look Dremeled first. I don't think I saw that in the video. So I either did it off camera or I didn't record it. So once all the circles were down, then came time to do the little heat vent. This turned into a nightmare. I kind of messed up on this like 3 times over until I got it. I don't even know how I managed to mess it up this many times. I'm trying to remember exactly what I did. A lot of it came down to like the angle of the vents inside. I think at first I put them in backwards, if I remember right. And then after that, I took them out to get them right, and I put them in backwards again. And then I realized like it was too steep, and then it was, I don't even know what I was doing. Maybe I was just tired. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It looks cleaner than that one, but you'd think after doing 2 on that one that I would have it down packed on this one, but I don't know what I was doing. And then from there, cleaned it all up after like the 10th try to get that thing right for some reason. So after that, I needed to make the actual ball cap end of the sword, which is this. So on the figure, it's like a double-headed sword, or a double-headed skull on both ends. So I needed to make a skull mold. I have lots of skulls in the house, but for this one in particular, I use this little glass skull that I have. If you look at a bunch of my other stuff, especially the sister battlesuit here, I don't know how much you can actually see, but this little skull on the belt and on the chest there, they were actually from this as well. So I've had this guy for a while. The way I did this was, I actually still have it, just in case I were to make another one. I took some foam, cut a hole out for it, and then wrapped that tightly around him. But I had this kind of cut to fit. Tuck that back behind the cheekbones, and just like that. And then this entire spot here, I completely covered with hot glue. So I'm actually kind of excited to talk about this. So I've done these before in the past and royally screwed them up. I've had issues in the past with trying to separate the hot glue from my mold or my cast or whatever. I'm trying to remember still where the comments were. I think they were in, yes, when I was doing my video on my purity seals, we had like a little thread going on suggestions on how to alleviate this problem. So the problem I was having was the hot glue would stick too hard to the actual mold, and either the hot glue would rip or, you know, pieces would stay. And I got a couple different suggestions, some saying to like how to make a stamp and stuff like that. But the best suggestion I got in that, someone said to, I think they said to like spray it down with oil or something first, which is what I did. It's over there, I can't reach it. But I have like a little spray can of, I don't think it's PB Blaster, I think it's like Liquid Wrench. Liquid Wrench, WD-40, PB Blaster, probably even cooking oil, anything. What I did then was, when I had this, I just gave it like a quick spray here and there just to make sure everything got covered, and then I layered the whole thing in hot glue. After that dried, I literally was able to just pull it right off. It was amazing. It was like night and day between. And it worked so good that after I made several casts with this, I still have the actual hot glue mold. It's still intact and still really good anytime I go to do this again. So quick explanation again on the casting process then, or not, yeah, the mold process, casting, I don't know. Then before I go to put my foam clay in, I'll take that again, give another quick spray in here, and then I'll take my foam clay, pack it inside, and then just like anytime you're dealing with foam clay, you got your foam clay in your mold, put it in your freezer, give it like an hour or two, pull it out, and then that foam clay should be hard enough that you can pop it off the hot glue mold, set that aside. If you're gonna use it again, give it another spray. Pack it in again with more foam clay, throw it back in the freezer. Same thing with that, except one extra step made my life so much easier. I don't remember who said that. I don't even think it was related to the hot glue mold. It was just in the discussion, but thank you. Thank you. I think at the same time I ran into an issue with my Hobby Lobby foam. Not Hobby Lobby, Michaels. It started giving me troubles, and I thought that I had bought a bad batch. So I went to the store, bought 2 more tubs, and they were also a bad batch. Like, when they package their stuff, it's already wrapped in like air vacuum. But when I opened it up and took it out of the vacuum seal, it was already air dry, all 3 cans. Well, they weren't fully air dry. It was more like mostly air dry. I had to like put water in the bucket, put the lid back on, set it aside, let it kind of soak in, and then take it out, and I had to work with it, and then it took forever. That's one of the reasons that the video for this got put back, was because that foam clay sucked. But eventually I got it to a working condition where I could start making my molds. So I made my 2 copies of the skulls for both the front and the back. And I wasn't gonna make the whole base of it foam clay though, because even though foam clay can dry hard, I still need this sword to stand on that, you know? So I made the center base of that out of foam. I layered a bunch of sheets together, kind of cut it around bevel until I kind of got it to match the shapes of the skull so that they could actually attach to it somewhat. And then on the inside, then I had another end cap for the end of the handle, because let me show you. Whoopsies. I'll just show you here. So this now screws off. And I have a screw fitting on the end of this, and on the inside of this is the other end. I did this for one main reason, not so much for any kind of carrying purposes, more for painting. So now, because this is a screw-on, I can take something else, another fitting, put it on there, and then hang it from this, and then I can paint it that way. Same for this. I can take another fitting, screw it in here, or just hold it up, whatever. But it's more so I can paint the sword without it being on anything. And then once that's done, I'll put this on and glue it down proper, and then that'll never come off again. So that's why I did that. Let's see. So while I was making the rest of that, I wanted to address that side vent that I had mentioned before that was sticking out too far. I didn't want to make it again. I didn't want to tear it apart because it was already such a pain in my ass. So what I did, I was like, okay, well the shielding for this is 12 millimeters. That's about how much I need this thing to be shrunken down. I was like, why don't I just cut around it, pull that layer off, and then just shove it inside. And that is exactly what I did, and it worked great. From there, then I went back to making the little skull end piece. I don't think I have any video of that, but like after I glued the skull sides onto the thing, I took some more foam clay, and then I just kind of filled the gaps to try and like make it go from like forehead to forehead and side to side and all that stuff. And then afterwards, I dremeled things smooth just to try and make it a little, I don't know, nicer. And then after that, I just needed to make a little trim piece on the bottom. So I had, I screwed it on first, made out my measurements. So that way, like the fitting itself would slide over the handle. And that's it. I think I must not have shown a couple extra things because, you know, I think I did glue this here on too, which is like a little, I don't know, it kind of looks like a sight for a gun, but it's, I don't know, whatever it is, it's on the actual toy. Let me see, it still needs sealed, but other than that, no major updates, or no major things. I also had put a trim on this piece too. But, yeah. I think it looks pretty cool, especially compared to the figure. It is dimensionally accurate, almost to the teeth. If I remember it, I think I might have less teeth than on that one. I didn't even count how many teeth that actually has. I just went more with what looked cool. But yeah, this thing is a little over 4.5 feet long. Surprisingly light. It's not heavy at all, which is good because I will be carrying this all day at a convention. So, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if this video is coming up before or after the convention. And right now I am in the final crunch to get all this done and built in time. So, but yes, after this, I'll be able to spend more time on the video production. I won't be rushing through things. I'll make sure that whatever I'm talking about will be more well packaged, you know, no random rambling. I probably could have done the same for this video too, to be honest, but I don't know. I just wanted to get it out, or at least get it started. So, yeah, I guess see you in the next one. Things will probably be a lot nicer video-wise. Vroom, vroom.